Oh my gosh, what year is this? A speed paint video from Baylee J? I figured for stuff like this, it kind of makes sense to do a standalone video. The way I've been doing it is it's in the vlogs and it's kind of just in pieces because, if I start a piece one week, finish it the next week, it's spread across two vlogs. But those segments are still kind of long. It might just be a 10-minute chunk that is a speed paint, which I feel like doesn't really fit. But I don't know. Maybe if it's a smaller piece of artwork, it stays in the vlog. And if it's longer, it's its own standalone video. And that goes for art journal spreads and anything like that. Why not just post it separately as a little bonus video? Plus, my first two sessions of working on this were during live streams, and now the live streams happen before I start filming the vlog for the week, so it just kind of made sense. I was like, yeah, let's wrap this up. So yeah, I worked on it on the live streams, like I said, in two sessions, and then I finished the artwork off stream. And I actually finished it during a shop update. That never happens. I never take a break from order packing to finish artwork, but I did it on a Saturday where it wasn't supposed to be a work day, but I was running the embroidery machines to try to get more embroidery done and reorganizing the embroidery room. And then once that was done, I was still running the machines, but then going and working on the artwork. And if a machine stopped, I would get up and handle it and then sit back down, continue working on the artwork. So that's how it went. And the art piece itself, okay, the inspo. So my previous Copic piece, like full Copic illustration, was the Forest Cuddles illustration. So it's sort of piggybacking off of that in terms of doing more marker rendering. Because I went through this phase where I was doing very minimal shading with my markers, and then I would go in with pencil and add more shading and texture. And I still love that look, but the Forest Cuddles got me thinking, I kind of want to go back a little bit to doing more pieces where most of the shading is done in Copic, and then there's just a little bit of pencil to fix up some areas and add outlines to things, because I don't really do ink outlines anymore. It's always been pencil outlines for the last few years, so if I'm doing the outlines in pencil, might as well add a little extra shading here and there and what have you. It's a nice non-committal way to add more shading, because sometimes going back in with the marker is scary because I don't want a harsh line. So it's like, okay, if I'm adding more marker here, I gotta go back in with several colors to re-blend it all out. And it can be nerve-wracking sometimes. And so it's less stressful to just use pencil, but it does alter the texture, which is the one downside, because if you only have pencil texture in select areas, that can look weird. But anyway, Forest Cuddles was part of the inspiration, and then also that Cresselia full art Pokemon card. So I did some illustrations in my sketchbook that were there was a direct study from the card, and then there was me drawing some Pokemon, and I colored them in to match. And what I love about that card is just the overall value contrast, where the room is very pale and the window is very dark. And so I wanted to create a scene that had high value contrast, maybe not quite as extreme as that card, but where one area of the illustration is dark, another area is light. So we've got this gradient thing going on where the foreground is dark and the background is light, which is also opposite of how my brain typically wants to do things. Usually I want the foreground light and the background's dark or something like that, but this is the opposite. So the character, the cat, is actually in the shadows. And speaking of the cat, the third inspo for this is my whole idea I've had recently of miniature cats, and I drew that potted plant with a cat in it. This is kind of an extension of that, although it's out in nature and is maybe not as obvious that the cat is miniature. But we have like the shamrocks and the leaves, which are huge compared to the cats. Even the flowers are big compared to the cat. And so it is a mini cat. It just might not be obvious. Because it makes sense to do a creature, maybe like a mouse in this scene or some kind of insect character. But I just I like drawing cats. I will draw more animals, but I just had this idea of a cat loafing on the shamrock, and I was like, okay, let's go with that. So I illustrated it digitally, and you also saw me do some other quick doodles. It was because I was getting warm-up suggestions from chat, so I could do warm-up illustrations. So there was like a leprechaun and other such things. And then I was illustrating on top of my thumbnail that I had drawn. Because I guess that was technically the first session, was the night before the live stream. I was thumbnailing some ideas, and I came across my idea quite quickly, and I wasn't even doing that much sketching in the very first two thumbnails. I was adding shadow just to kind of get an idea of the overall lighting, since that was a big thing I was going for in this. So it's like a few scribbles and some shading, you know? And then I drew a little bit more of a fleshed out version of the thumbnail, and I just blew the thumbnail up big and then did my clean sketch over that. So there was no, I guess the thumbnail kind of was a messy sketch, but it went straight from thumbnail to clean sketch. And like I said, I don't do line art anymore, so I can go from the clean sketch to just tracing that in pencil onto my piece of paper. I'm missing footage. I don't know if that footage, I mean, the footage had to have existed. I don't know if I just didn't hit record or what, because we're missing me transferring the sketch onto the paper. I don't know why I don't have a file for that, because I did that on live stream. It was all part of the same day. I did the sketching, I traced it, and then I was coloring in the illustration, like a good chunk of it. And that's just missing. And I'm also missing a chunk of the coloring where suddenly a bunch more shamrocks are colored in, and I don't have footage for that. So I don't know what happened there, but we don't have the complete thing, but that's okay. This video is already long enough, and I do cut out some parts. Like, you might see me coloring a couple flowers, and I don't show myself coloring the rest of the flowers because they're all the same. Or like, for example, the shamrocks, you maybe see me color in 4 or so shamrocks. Do you need to see me color in more of them? Not really, 'cause it's more of the same thing. And just for the sake of, keeping this video a little more condensed, I had to do it that way. So maybe it's not so bad that we missed it. I'm just sad that I don't have the footage of me coloring the shamrock around the cat, because that's kind of the focal point of the illustration. So I would have liked to include that, but that's why it's not included. Now, with doing the sketch digitally and a rough color comp, it's so tempting to just finish an illustration digitally, because it would get done a lot faster that way. It makes me think back to things like my bakery oil painting. I had done the digital sketch and I colored it in a decent amount because I wanted a clear plan to then go in with oils, because, oils take a long time to dry, and I don't want to have to fuss with the color too much. I want a clear idea of what I'm painting. And so I really planned out ahead of time, but I was looking at the digital sketch like, okay, this is more than half done. If I finish this digitally, I'm probably like 2/3 of the way done. But no, because I'm going to, transfer it onto a piece of wood and paint it with oils, I'm only like 10% done. So I don't know why I make more work for myself. I guess I just like traditional art that much. I mean, not to say I won't ever finish something digitally, but this was not the time for that. I wanted this to be a marker illustration. And in terms of time, this was much quicker than the Forest Cuddles illustration, but it is also smaller. This is a 9x12 piece of paper, and then the Forest Cuddles was an 11x14. So it was a lot bigger, and it had a lot of smaller detail, lots of leaves and fruit, flowers, that kind of thing. This one has bigger objects and more repeating of the same object, so it's simpler overall. So I got through it a lot faster. And the flowers, when I looked up shamrocks, I was like, can shamrocks flower? And so I was Googling that, and I was coming across some white flowers and some yellow flowers. So that's why I decided to go with that for this illustration, because I kind of wanted those colors anyway. And I was like, oh, this is perfect, because obviously there's different varieties of clovers, shamrocks, whatever. But that's why I chose those flowers specifically. Now, the white ones, they are hanging down from above, so they're not actually part of the shamrocks. So the yellow ones are the shamrock flowers. The white ones are not. But it was inspired by that search I found, especially the shape of them. They've got that kind of horn, that conical, no, it's more like a horn because it flares, A horn-like shape, whatever that's called. So that's why I decided on that. And then the leaves are just generic leaves, and I wanted the leaves different from the shamrocks, like in color, because I don't want them to just blend in. So the leaves are lighter green with more yellow hues to them, and then the shamrocks have less yellow, and they're more of like a true green to emerald green sort of thing. And I wanted the shamrocks to look very plump and juicy and, pillowy, like the kitties on a nice pillowy surface. And so that's what I did. And it's more shading than I originally thought I would do on the shamrocks, because going into this, I was thinking of scenes where there is the overall value contrast between different areas in the scene, but each individual item is kind of low contrast. So in this case, they ended up being more high contrast overall. But I just like the idea of not going too overboard with the shading of each individual object. They don't need to be 3D. It can be relatively flat color, but still good value contrast throughout the piece. You know what I mean? And I started with the path because it was easy, I thought, a good easy place to start because it's supposed to look chunky and uneven, and it's a nice gradient which serves as the baseline for coloring the rest of it, also as a gradient, because when you're coloring in individual leaves on a shamrock, for example, it's harder to picture the overall color gradient as you go, so then you got to go back and darken things. So the path was like a guide where, over here remember to do it darker, over there remember to do it lighter. So that was nice. I do feel like I could have gone a little more adventurous with the color in this because it's very limited. It's like yellows, oranges, browns, and then greens, really. Like I could have gone more bluish in the shadows. I could have added more pinky tones instead of just peachy. But I kind of like it this way. Like I don't regret the way I chose to do it, but I could do something similar where I get a little more adventurous with the color. But I love the simplicity of this. There's a decent amount of detail in it, but also not really because the objects are so large and the color palette is quite limited. But it just looks so great overall. Like it makes you think of something like The Meeting. Again, a piece with good value contrast overall. But that's a very limited palette. It's mostly greens and then some brown and black. But it just works out. Like sometimes simple is better, And so I feel like this has that same vibe for me when I look at it. I'm like, yes, I love that. I love the level of detail I went into it. I think it was perfect. And now for the kitty, we got a calico this time. Because, I draw a lot of cats, but a lot of times it's either Kiki or Midna, or maybe just the silhouette of a cat, so it looks like a black cat. The Meeting is all black cats. And so I was like, you know what? It's time for a calico. We got to branch out and do some other kinds of cats. And the colors of a calico just worked out perfectly for this art piece because the black areas pop, but then also the oranges match the scene, and even the white areas kind of pop. It draws your eye to that area. And I had to do the pencil outlines right away on the cat because it was bothering me. Like sometimes it's so hard to wait till the end to add pencil because I'm like, no, I just need to see the final vision now. I don't want it all stuck in limbo. Like I need to see the cat finished. I usually just hold off because what if you want to add more marker? The marker's not going to go over top of pencil. But also, I don't want my hand to gradually smudge and lighten the lines because then I have to go back over them anyway to darken them. But I just couldn't resist with the little kitty. So there it is. And sometimes I color the subject matter very last. And I'm like, no, we're not doing it that way because I want a little something to look at, I want some cuteness to look at instead of coloring in the cat very last. And then I got to the leaves. And again, I'm struggling with the gradient. I had to go back in and shade in some leaves more and tweak things because it's kind of scary at first. And with marker, you can't really lighten it. You can lift color a bit with a colorless blender, but it's going to look splotchy and weird. And so, oh my God, I'm just realizing. I was like, oh my God, I never did the colorless blender sparkles on this one like I did on Forest Cuddles. I mean, I wasn't really going to. I could have done a few, I guess, but too late for that. I didn't want to overdo it like I did it. I mean, not that Forest Cuddles was overdone, but that was like a main feature of it was white gel pen dots and colorless blender dots. But anyway, I'm saying it's better to start off light because you can always go darker with markers. Can always go darker with markers. There's some kind of rhyming slogan in there. And so yeah, some of these leaves here, you see me finish coloring them, but then I went back a different day and darkened them more, gave it more contrast. This is making me wonder now if I did 2 sessions off live stream. I can't remember. No. Unless there's lost footage. Now for the area between the shamrocks and the higher leaves where we see all the stems and stuff. In the original thumbnail color comp thing, that was the darkest area. It was darker than the shamrocks, but I'm like, okay, I don't know if that's gonna look too dark against the other leaves. I was just a little unsure. So again, not going too dark off the bat. I did go in and darken it a bit, but I went for more of like a gradient where it's darker at the top so that it contrasts with the light color of the leaves, and then it's lighter at the bottom so it's contrasting with the dark color of the shamrocks. Was that the right move? I don't know, but I think it looks pretty okay. Oh, and much like the Forest Cuddles illustration, I was adding that peachy tone to all the leaves. That's going to be my new thing, is adding peachy tones to everything, because it just makes it a little more interesting. And it's so easy to just shade in the leaf fully green and then go back over it with the peachy tone, and it looks okay and it blends pretty okay for the most part. Sometimes you do have to go back in with some green, like maybe on the shamrocks it was more common, but it's like one of those cases of taking a color that is lighter. Like it's not that much lighter than the greens below it, but it is a little bit. And so I just kind of push the green pigment aside to make way for the peachy tone. And also I put that on the yellow flowers because I don't want them to be just yellow. They need a little bit of something else. So they have a bit of green on them as well. Not necessarily in a reflected light kind of way, but it does work out that way. Kind of like the peach on the leaves. Is there peachy stuff reflecting light onto the tops of the leaves? No. I just add the color for interest. And now for the pencil outlines. Oh, yeah. I was so excited to get to this part. This is what I was doing during the shop update. I did have to do a little bit of marker stuff here and there, but most of it was the pencil outlines and extra shading. And it just looks so crisp and beautiful. It's like, oh, there it is. Now it's coming together. And it's nice and subtle. Some areas the lines are more noticeable, other areas less noticeable. And I use a variety of colors, like different shades of greens. I was using a really dark orange color. It's not as colorful as my line art sometimes is, but it's pretty decent. Oh, and some browns in some areas. And even using the peachies on the shamrocks to just, maybe blend out an area that wasn't quite as blended. Also getting some yellow in there for the highlights. Just pushing the shadows a little darker, the highlights a little lighter here and there as I saw fit. But it just felt out of place sometimes. Like I'm coloring in the edge of the leaf and I'm like, this is too much pencil texture. The white flowers also have a ton of pencil texture. So the texture is not consistent throughout, but it is what it is. There's something just so relaxing and satisfying about this process, though. Again, seeing it all come together, but just doing my little scribbles slowly, building up the color with the pencil. It's so relaxing and just such a great part of the process. I'm looking back at the footage and I'm like, I'm just remembering how good it felt at the time while creating that. And it was also very nice creating something that didn't take way too many sittings to complete. Like Forest Cuddles is beautiful. It's like maybe my favorite artwork I've ever made. I'm unsure, but it did take so long. And I was like, ooh, I want more of this, but man, that was a lot of work. Also, I don't want every piece to be like that. And so this was proof that I can do something a little smaller and a little simpler and still get the same level of satisfaction and use some of the same techniques. And yeah, I don't know. These Pokemon cards, man, I feel like they're leveling up my art. Like, praise the Pokemon TCGP game because the artwork in that game, like, yes, it's Pokemon cards, but really it's an art collecting game. And that's the appeal to me. I want cute cards. And I just love looking at the different art styles and how they colored in certain characters and like scenery. It's just, I'm learning so much from these Pokemon cards and I'm applying that knowledge and leveling up my art, and it's just so great. I feel so connected to what I've been making lately, and hopefully there's more to come. So here I was filming my finishing shot and I was editing the clips and I was like, you know what? No, this is not quite right. The foreground flower, the biggest yellow one, it was not dark enough. And then also looking at the vertical stem area, I feel like it didn't have a good enough gradient because it was abruptly going from green to yellow and white. I felt like I needed to bring more of the greens over so it wasn't as abrupt of a change at the end. So then here is the fixed version, the tweaked version. Will I continue to make tweaks? I don't know, but that's how it is for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
He's always